All right, everybody. I am going to talk to you a little bit today about persuasive speaking as you're getting ready for your upcoming persuasive speeches. So first, let's start by talking about what I like to call the big C claims that you can make in a persuasive speech. There are three different kinds of these claims, and just think of this as like the main thing you're arguing, your thesis, right? So you can have a fact claim, a value claim, or a policy claim. Fact claims are statements that say that something is or isn't true. Fact claims do not always have to be factual. I always like to throw that out there early because a lot of times students will get confused because they're like, oh, that's not a fact claim because it's based on something that's not true, but it actually is a fact claim. My example here being that the world is flat. This is a fact claim, but is not, in fact, a fact. So just to clarify, it's just saying that something is or isn't true. Another example of this, our company has the largest influence on culture of any other organization in the tech sector. This is something that you're arguing is or isn't true. Our second kind of claim, big C claim, is a value claim. And this is saying that something is good or bad or right or wrong. So an example of this might be saying the Pledge of Allegiance in school is wrong. So this, again, this is not arguing that saying the Pledge of Allegiance in school does or does not exist. It's just saying this is something good or this is something bad. And then another example could be, our competitors don't value their customers like we do. Well, this is technically kind of making a fact claim. It's talking from a pejorative perspective, so it's saying that we are valuing people more than these other companies are. So remember, if it's a right, wrong, good, bad kind of a claim, then it's typically a value claim. Last, we've got policy claims. These policy claims are typically statements that are arguing for something to become an official policy in an organization or a law, or something that you really should or should not do. So an example of a law-based policy claim would be, we should legislate climate change initiatives at the federal level. So this is saying that we should be enacting laws to stop climate change. That is a policy claim, big C claim, the big argument you're making. Another example would be, our company should adopt both a maternity and paternity leave policy. So this is specifically talking about policies that should or should not be made into policy at your company. Now, each of these organizational, or each of these big kind of claims have different strategies or patterns you can use. We're just going to talk about several different organizational patterns at the end, since I clarify in your assignment which ones, I give you some options of which to use. Now, as you are going through your speech and you're talking about your big C claim, you are talking about your big thesis, the main argument of your speech, you're going to have to do lots of smaller things to try to be persuasive. Each time you are trying to make a persuasive statement, you're going to need to do three things. You're going to need to make a claim, and this is a little c claim. So these are smaller statements that happen all throughout the speech. For example, if I am arguing that our company needs to adopt a maternity and a paternity leave policy, a claim, that's the big C claim for the speech. The little c sentence claim that I could be making is something like talking about how families are less satisfied whenever they don't have time to spend with newborns, right? This is some kind of statement. It's an assertion. It's a conclusion that you're drawing. You want to make sure, in addition, whenever you make that small c claim, that you are supporting it with evidence. Well, why is that true? If families say that they're unsatisfied with the amount of time they get to spend with their newborns, who says? You can quote research that's been done. You can provide anecdotes. You know, I talk to every person in my company that has had a child while they've been working here, and every single one of them said they needed more time at home. Then what you want to make sure you include is what's called the warrant. And this is really just the link between those two statements. Now, it may seem redundant, or you might think, my audience is going to be able to get this. They don't need to have me explain what the connection is between the two. But sometimes your audience is not going to put it together. It's your job as a speaker, as an effective communicator, to make that connection. All of the employees here said that they needed more time with their newborns, and that relates directly to their satisfaction. Being unhappy at home makes them unhappy at work. Something to that effect. All right, so make sure anytime you're making a smaller argument, you're including these three components of a good persuasive message. You also want to think about utilizing different kinds of persuasive messages throughout your speech. So you've got what are called, these are Aristotelian persuasive tools, right? So these are like ancient Greek terms that we have been using in the communication field forever, but they refer to three broad categories of persuasive strategies that are super duper effective. Ethos is the first one. This is credibility, your credibility as a speaker. Logos is the second one. This is how logical, see the connection there? Logos, logical, how logical your argument is. And then pathos, emotions, the emotional appeals you're using in your speech. To talk briefly about each of these, ethos or credibility, this is largely based on your knowledge. Are you using good resource? Do you seem like you know what you're talking about? Are you being honest? Do we know you as someone to tell the truth? If you're not someone who's telling the truth, you are not a credible speaker. So you've got to always be honest and upfront with your audience. And then I think that this one is particularly important anytime you're really trying to get somebody to take a specific action. Are you interested in doing what's right? Are you suggesting this policy change because it is the right thing to do? Or are you saying it because you have your own selfish motivations, right? And so a lot of times the way that you communicate your interest in doing what's right is explaining to your audience why it benefits them. You demonstrate this not only through content, not only through the research you do, but also through delivery. Really coming across as a credible speaker, having confidence, maintaining eye contact, speaking clearly. We talked about this in your informative speech. These are important things for you to use, especially in your persuasive speeches. Now let's talk about logos quickly. This is, of course, our logic. What kind of evidence are you using? Are you making good connections? So you want to make sure that the information you have, the facts that you're using, are based in reality, based in objective, good research. You have to have sources or proof, evidence to support your claims. That's one of the reasons why I ask you to have different sources for your speeches. Also, it's a good habit to get in terms of just speaking to people. You want to make sure that your reasoning is not faulty. And this is anytime that you use information incorrectly to make your point, or you use bad information, or you use a logic that just doesn't even relate or make a lot of sense. I have a whole other lecture about faulty reasoning. If you've taken any other classes from me, there's a good chance you've heard it because it's one of my favorite things to talk about. Unfortunately, I'm not going to go into it today, but if you have more questions about that, just let me know. Good reasoning is what I do want to focus on. So we've got what's called inductive reasoning, and this is whenever you take several different pieces of information and you make a general claim about it. So for example, let's go back to that example I had about our company values customers more than our competitors. So what we could say is that we have higher, we spend more time with our customers than our competitors do. Our customers say that they have more satisfaction after leaving our business than the other customers do. We have a policy specifically written to help our customers, our competitors don't. So all of these things taken together mean that we value our customers more than our competitors, taking lots of specific things, putting them together to make a big claim. We've got 4 kind of big types of this inductive reasoning. One is example reasoning. My example here for example reasoning is if you were talking about texting and driving and you wanted to use lots of examples of how accidents had been caused by texting and driving to make your argument. Another is comparison reasoning. Now, I'm not trying to offend anybody with this example, but you might be making an argument that vaping is bad for you because it is similar to smoking, and you would then compare several different, similar things between smoking and vaping. Sign reasoning is another kind of inductive reasoning, and this is whenever it's difficult to make a claim because you can't actually prove objectively, scientifically, the thing that it is that you're trying to argue for. So you use lots of little signs, right? Global warming is an example of this. We know that global warming is happening because of melting polar ice caps and climate change and, extinction of different animal breeds, so on and so forth. I think sometimes physicians will do this too. If they're trying to diagnose you, they may not be able to really have a test for something, but they know all the different signs that are there to indicate that you're sick. And then causal reasoning is our last kind of good inductive reasoning, cause and effect. We can show that one thing causes the other to happen. For example, you might argue that tanning causes skin cancer to occur, or can be a cause of skin cancer. All right, our last kind of good persuasive strategy to use is pathos. Now, a lot of times students will want to stay away from pathos because they don't want to come across as manipulative. But pathos is a really effective strategy for persuasion, because what you're doing is making a connection with your audience. You're putting a human face on that problem. And so it can be a really big motivator. The important thing to do if you're using pathos is make sure that what you're arguing does have sound reasoning to back it. So you don't want to say, for example, the world is flat and I had a friend who fell off the edge of the world and it was the saddest thing ever, because that's not based in fact. That's not based in reality. But you could, say you're talking about the maternity and paternity leave. You could tell a compelling story from your own perspective. And that is also based in your evidence, your logos, and, again, just makes it a stronger appeal to your audience. You may consider using a fear appeal. There are lots of different emotional appeals you can use. Fear appeals tend to be ones that we know because it's like, I'm going to scare you into doing something, or I'm going to scare you into not doing something. These are okay to use. They can be really effective too, but you've got to make sure that whatever it is that you're talking about has a real serious threat. It can't just be something frivolous like, I might say to my kids, Grace, Liam, if you don't go to bed tonight, the boogie monster's going to come and get you. I don't think that that's really going to happen. So it may not be a great place to use a fear appeal. You want to only use them with a very serious threat. And then the other part is that your audience members have to be able to do something to stop that serious threat from happening. You could say, preparing for a tornado as an example, we can, encourage you to have storm shelter, to have a procedure in place, know what to do if a tornado is coming, and that is a serious threat. And audience members can do something to try to change the outcome of, getting hurt. If you, go back in time 100 years, you might tell people, prepare for a tornado, but if they didn't have the technology then to really know what to do to prepare for a tornado, they didn't have the power to fix it. Not a great place to use a fear appeal. Okay, let's talk briefly about the different organizational patterns that you can use for your persuasive speeches. The first is problem, cause, solution. My example here is that your problem is that your organization has a high turnover rate. And you identified that the cause of all of these people leaving quickly is that there is a low salary. Your employees are not paid a lot. So your solution to that is to argue for a salary increase. This is a problem, cause, solution that is advocating for the policy claim our company should increase salaries. Okay. Cause and effect, pretty straightforward. This causes that. For a policy claim, here you might be talking about, implementing a policy that increases the amount of time off that your employees get. You could say lack of time off is the cause. The effect is we have a lot of sick employees who then have to take time out of their sick leave, and it's making them, really unhappy and even sicker. Cause and effect, policy claim, our company should implement a sick leave, or our policy should implement more time off, more vacation time off. Okay, our next organizational pattern, criteria, application. You've got a point that's talking about the criteria of something, and then you apply it to the next. I love this pattern because I think it's really slick, makes a lot of sense to me. For example, you might be advocating for a set of policies or some kind of policy to be changed in your organization. We should adopt XYZ policy. Criteria application would say, first, you're going to establish what the criteria are of a thriving company. Really good companies in our field have happy employees. They have lots of customers. They have, great reputation. And then you apply it to that policy. Implementing this policy will, increase satisfaction with our employees. It will, spread positive PR about us, which will bring more customers in. So you're taking that criteria of a good, thriving company and applying it to a specific situation and arguing for that application. Comparison is another organizational pattern that you can use. This is really where you're just comparing two things. So you might say you work for a nonprofit organization. You're trying to, manage the organization better. You're going to look at different policies that are used in for-profit entities and try to compare them to the policies used in a nonprofit entity and see, hey, if we do this differently, then something else, will happen that's good. Very similar to the next pattern, which is a comparative advantage. This typically stems from only two kinds of things that you're comparing and contrasting, and the argument is that one of them is better than the other. So, for example, you've got two policies. Let's say you're advocating for a policy option regarding promotion at your organization. We should adopt policy number 1 for promotion over policy 2. You would then compare the two policies together, and in that comparison, highlight all of the advantages of policy 1, if that is what you're arguing is better. Our last strategy is motivated sequence, Monroe's motivated sequence, which has 5 different steps to it. The first is to bring attention to whatever the issue is that you want to talk about. So let's say I'm going to give a persuasive speech about why universities should change their teaching evaluation system. The attention part might be, I'm going to read you all these really horrible quotes that were totally unuseful to me from my teaching evaluations. Oh, Sarah has dumb hair. Oh, Sarah, likes to wear green sweaters or whatever. These are things that are, bringing to attention how unhelpful perhaps that, particular survey might be. Then you need to establish the need. However, it's really important for us to have feedback on our teaching strategies. We need to know what we can do better to improve, what we need to change, what are things that are working, things that aren't working. So you're talking about the attention. Here's all these really bad things that are going on right now. Need. Here's what we need to do to fix those bad things. Then you present the solution. You satisfy that need. To be able to satisfy the need of still getting evaluated on our teaching without, something that is just talking about our appearance, for example, this is where you would suggest your policy change. I propose that we have peer evaluations from other instructors on campus who are, tenured faculty or whatever. You talk about that as your solution. Next, you would help your audience visualize what this would look like. So you give specific details. Faculty would be on a rotating schedule for evaluating their peers. That way the burden wouldn't be too much on any one faculty member, blah, blah, blah. And then your last step is action, telling your audience members specifically what they can do to enact that change, to enact that policy change. We should implement this policy in the faculty handbook. We need to bring this up at the next faculty meeting. So again, your motivated sequence: bring attention, establish a need, satisfy that need, visualize success, and tell your audience how they can take action. So that hopefully gives you a better idea of what I'm looking for your persuasive speech. Remember, you're going to be focusing on a policy change for the company you talked about in your informative speech. The idea is you've gotten to know the ins and outs of the company with your informative speech. Now you're going to try to persuade your audience about something that should be changed in that company. If you've got any questions, let me know.